Guys, I had a different idea for today's video. I was going to end January with a tier time, taking a look at what has been a transitional period for a certain popular cinematic universe that I've made content about before, the MCU. And while doing prep for that video, it kind of got to be a bit much. I still have a decent amount of things to watch, and I just don't realistically think I would have gotten it done for today's video. So instead, I'm going to stay in the realms of the MCU while focalizing a bit on what I would argue is one of, if not the worst thing to come out of Phase 4, and it was definitely a disappointment for me, given the series in question, or this part of the series, and how great it has been. It's also a movie that was the punching bag to a video I made in November, and I'm going to consider this a sort of tangential sequel to that video and a completely different segment on the channel that was also a segment that I enjoyed making last year, even if I didn't make it as much as Tier Time. But today we're going to be giving another look at you, Thor, that is completely washed out on my television screen, by taking a look at the fourth installment in the Thor series that had some good ideas, but didn't quite utilize them in a way that could have been more world unifying across this transitional period of the MCU, while also still leaving the window open for the ideas within Love and Thunder to thrive further on in the story of this character. It's a movie that I really wanted to enjoy and get more out of than I ended up getting, and what would a Thor video on my channel be without a little bit of a suit up? So let's take a look at Thor: Love and Thunder. It's wild to me that following the success of Thor Ragnarok, somehow Taika Waititi found a way to make the worst kind of Thor movie with Thor: Love and Thunder. It is a movie that is frustrating to sit through, if only because there are some ideas here that could have burgeoned out into something more, while also tying into the themes that Phase 4 was going through. But it just kind of doesn't do that, and instead has two different concepts that could have done well together, given there's this sort of overarching theme of self-sacrifice and death across one of the protagonists and the antagonist. And while it kind of plays that up, it doesn't fully commit in vain to a plot that I don't think works for the villain at hand. There's just a lot of problems I have with Thor: Love and Thunder as far as its tonal consistencies. Some of the writing just feels off base with some of the players at hand. And I feel like there's some aspects that kind of underplay what I was hoping to see in Thor following Thor's ending in Endgame. And when recently rewatching it for some fucking reason, I looked at it with a different eye, and creativity struck me, and I figured, you know what? I'm getting it out of the way. As far as right now, I know I have a couple other things to watch. This is my least favorite movie and thing within Phase 4. Let's try to improve upon it. While I don't lose sight of some of the ideas within Love and Thunder proper, I wanted to sort of shift those ideas into better moments with the characters in the movie, while also trying to keep the unity of love, or burgeoning or rekindling love, a part of the movie's core. You know, still having the potential for some of the bits that may not have landed, but could have still gone over in this new version of the movie. One of the biggest changes I would make to Thor 4 is I would change its villain. I think that Gore the God Butcher is a good character, and I feel like Christian Bale actually did a good job with the character in the movie. He just kind of felt out of place in this movie. I feel like they could have done a movie with him, and I'll talk a bit about that at the end of this video, but I don't think that with the story elements here that do work and feel like they help enhance the universe as it's in shift as far as the MCU is considered, he just needed to be plucked from this and saved for later, in my opinion. Instead, I would have the movie cold open on Earth, with a person being hunted by some beast. And in a moment of desperation, the human reveals themselves to be a Skrull, and that shadowy figure then attacks the Skrull, killing it in cold blood. With another Skrull seeing the action take place, it then changes into Nick Fury, who then sends out a distress call to Thor in space. Roll the Marvel credits thing, yada 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 yada. Korg telling a children's story to kids of Asgard about Thor. And I think that it's a good montage moment that does have Thor shifting from his Endgame bod back to his shredded self. It has a moment with the Guardians that I didn't hate, but just felt really mishandled, given the Guardians aren't really in the rest of the movie. It was just getting cast off into the sunset. I don't think that they should be throughout the entire movie. I don't want it to pull away from Thor, but they should have been in the movie more. Because what's here, I mean, it's fine, but I definitely wanted more with these characters interacting with each other. I also think that it was smart to introduce Jane how they did in the movie, and I think that that whole sequence with Jane is fine. I liked it, in fact, and I thought that the transition from that to her getting that sort of moment with Mjolnir, I also wanted to keep in the movie. There's moments in this movie that I think are pretty good and well executed, and those are definitely moments like that. I thought the reintroduction of Asgard in the movie was good. When landing on Earth, they do land in Asgard, who is being attacked by aliens who are there to confront and find Thor, because they say they've recently been attacked by Thor. But amidst this battle, there's also the Jane Foster reveal and the Mjolnir scene. While I think that the Mjolnir Stormbreaker stuff fell flat sometimes.
Listen, we good?
When it worked, it was fine, and I think that the first scene is one of the better scenes with the Mjolnir Stormbreaker relationship with Thor that I thought worked out all right. They convince the Guardians, who they say they'll leave the goats that they get from the montage scene in the beginning.
You accepted and no mistake with you. Now back to you.
On Asgard, if they'll work with them to track down this other Thor. They end up going to nowhere, where more aliens attack, and they get into a fight there when Cosmo jumps in and to help save Nowhere with the Guardians, and sends them to Wong when talking about like a clone of something. He kind of heard of this myth that Wong would know more about. It gives them a chance to go back to a Doctor Strange realm, which was in Ragnarok as well, and I felt like would be a good sort of continuation of their relationship in the MCU Thors, and at least the Academy of Arts, that, the Sorcerer Supreme, where Wong then describes with Thor, which again, Wong is all over Phase 4, so why not put him in the Thor movie, where he explains the concept of the multiverse more to Thor, and the discussion of variants sort of comes up, similarly to what was in Loki, and so it puts this thought in mind of Thor, Jane, and the group looking for a variant of Thor, or somebody looking similar to Thor, while also trying to follow this shard of Mjolnir's sort of echoing to Jane throughout the cosmos. I sort of thought of a transition scene after that, cutting to that lost shard of Mjolnir in the hands of Beta Ray Bill. So before I get ahead of myself with this whole Beta Ray Bill introduction scene, I'm going to take a second, and I meant to do this when I filmed proper, but I forgot to when making the video, talk about why specifically I want to replace Gore with Beta Ray Bill in Thor 4. But I'm also going to, before I get to that, talk about Beta Ray Bill a bit, for people that don't know who the fuck that is, because I've mentioned him a handful of times, and I've never really explicitly talked about who the character is. He's like a man. All I've said that he's a man with a horse head. He's like a horseman. He's from like a planet of warriors who got killed by a god, and I'm basically rewriting that one part. I'm MCU-ifying part of his lore to fit tangential to the world they're building by having his planet then be overrun by Skrulls instead. It creates this internal divide with Thor, with the people that he knows around him on Earth, and tangentially to all that sort of stuff. It plants Secret Invasion seeds, because I feel like they've got to start building to that a little better, because I'm excited for it, but I don't
think they're really hyping it up at all that much, which is kind of bizarre to me. And I feel like instead of doing what other parts of Phase 4 have done in the form of like introducing more gods and the realms of the afterlife through other cultures, like in Moon Knight and Miss Marvel, this movie also does that with gore, and I feel like it just adds a bit too much with what this movie already has trying to go on and build off of prior to that. Aside from that, I feel like Thor and his story should still take precedent in a way that the world building that this movie tries to do gets detracted from with all of that stuff. And I feel like that should be its own thing. Like, yeah, there's a parallel with Gore and Jane with the whole sacrifice via weapon thing, but I don't even think the movie plays it up that well or all that much at all. So like, I feel like Gore could just be his own thing, and he could thrive in his own thing that I'll talk about partially. But yeah, I feel like Beta Ray Bill reins it in a bit, keeps it a little more personal, while also giving the story places it can branch off to from here. And I don't know, it's a big change that I'm making, but I have, like, and I also feel like Taika Waititi is the type of director to, like, capitalize on a character whose whole look is he's a man with a horse head. I feel like it, like, writes itself, and it's a shame that he didn't get to make a movie with this character, or at least he hasn't yet. It sucks.
And Beta Ray Bill's whole story in this is to destroy the Skrulls, because they are the ones that destroyed his people from within, similarly to what Secret Invasion is. You can make this a setup to that. But then you can have it cut back to Thor and the Guardians sort of had a bonding moment. You know, Jane gets to travel the cosmos with Thor while also bonding with the Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, she could bond with, you know, Rocket with a love of science, and bond with Star-Lord over, you know, his mom had cancer, she has cancer. It could be a moment for them while Valkyrie bonds with, like, Nebula and Drax, because, you know, the love of battle. You know, you can have some fun bonding with the Guardians and Thor. You know, they've been in this movie sort of battling together, but it'd be a fun sort of character moment between these characters, in my opinion. While also not straying away from the absurdity of a character like Beta Ray Bill, like a bull horseman posing as a variant of Thor. You know, he could play up, like, the bit of his ship being called the Scuttlebutt. It also gives him a chance to write his own form of comedy with characters that have their own specific brand of comedy in the form of the Guardians, you know? I don't know, I really wanted the Guardians to be more in this movie, and there's a lot of situations where that could have been the case. And I wish that were the case with a movie like Love and Thunder, in my opinion. Especially if you're gonna try and be funny Thor, double down, why not keep the group that helped shift the tone of comedy in the MCU ever so slightly?
Also, with the Appetite for Destruction soundtrack, only having the Guardians in, like, the beginning of the movie makes the rest of the soundtrack just not work in the same way, in my opinion. I don't know, like, the way the movie presents itself with the soundtrack, it clashes more than what was going on in Ragnarok. It's a weird experience, honestly.
But either way, amidst following the call of Mjolnir throughout the galaxy, they find that Beta Ray Bill has brought up a legion of followers who are trying to help Beta Ray Bill restore his people's good name, or at least bring vengeance for his people. And this causes that sort of same battle, similarly to what happened in the original movie with the fight with Gore, where they all sort of fight each other. You got the Guardians, Valkyrie, and Jane fighting these aliens and demigods, while Beta Ray Bill and Thor are going at it. You can have this moment where, similarly to the fight with Gore, Valkyrie gets taken out, and Jane has this sort of further weakening with Beta Ray Bill, where she then has to be hospitalized. It's a moment for them to recoup and sort of discuss how to separate Beta Ray Bill from Mjolnir, because they thought with Stormbreaker and Mjolnir they'd be able to take on Beta Ray Bill, but that's not quite the case, because Beta Ray Bill knows his shit with that hammer and is determined to destroy the Skrulls by any means necessary. It could be a moment where they feel like they're going in with less, but are hoping to achieve more because they've weakened Beta Ray Bill's follower count, or his army. and are hoping to strike sooner to do a bigger hit to him while trying to get the shard away from him. And in this moment, it's when Jane then steps in. While they feel like they're getting it separated from him, she swoops in, completes Mjolnir. Once the hammer is completed, its overabundance of power drains Jane even further and pushes her past the point of no return health-wise. There's this moment where Jane kind of dies in Thor's arms, causing him to be enraged at Beta Ray Bill.
And in the following of the death of Jane, it cuts back to Korg telling another story of Thor, but Jane's Thor.
Still talking about the cementation of love and thunder, love amidst the thunder, all that sort of stuff.
With the sort of sad somberness to the ending, and when a kid asks what happened to Thor, instead of having this more bright, optimistic ending, it shifts back to moments after Thor is holding Jane and she sort of goes away. He gets more enraged. You know, he's lost another person very close to him, and in that moment he sees Beta Ray Bill storm off. He apologizes and he flies off into the sunset, and Thor just bolts after him carrying fully formed Mjolnir and just bursting into this beam of lightning into the sunset. And it sets up this sort of mystery chase of Thor through the cosmos.
Mid-credit scene instead being Thor tearing through the galaxy, killing a bar of aliens on a small planet on the edge of the universe, looking for Beta Ray Bill, going vicious as hell and dark as hell, pivoting into a reference to a story where I feel like Gore could be better utilized as far as discussions of death amongst the gods. How far can a god be pushed before he goes past the point of being right? Gore could be that check with Beta Ray Bill against Thor.
It could be a better place to introduce Zeus and other gods of the Western descent, gods a chance to look at Thor as a villain and introduce them through this prospect as well, because Gore and Thor are causing like a storm of destruction in the galaxy.
Gives you more of an opportunity to morph the story and integrate Gore a little more personally because of the parallel of the Necro Sword draining him similarly to Mjolnir with Jane. I don't know, there's just... With both of those ideas, there was potential. Just the movie itself doesn't capitalize on it, so why not expound it and give it an opportunity to have one other outing where Thor gets to be the villain in his own fifth movie? It just seems more ripe with potential personally, and also gives you the chance to have a sort of sequel that feels direct in the form of Love and Thunder transitioning into Blood and Thunder. And then, of course, the post-credit scene would be Jane going to Valhalla, being greeted by Heimdall, because it's a really good moment, in my opinion, that I think gives Jane a good send-off, while also letting Jane's existence as a Thor be another prod at the variant concept being discussed in Loki. I don't know. That's sort of the ideas I would want to put into Love and Thunder to make it a little bit more of a unified experience amidst the universe at whole. When watching Thor Love and Thunder, I feel like it's what people who don't like The Last Jedi see when they watch that movie. I love that movie and what it does. I've kind of discussed that already. But Thor Love and Thunder, for what it could have done to unify the MCU in thematics while it was in a tonal shift as far as like shifting into a new saga, these ideas could have been things to help enrich it as a part of that universe that either goes too hard on the comedy or utilizes a truly dramatic villain poorly, in my opinion. But those are my thoughts on Love and Thunder, what changes I would make to them. What did you think of my version of Thor 4? Do you think it's better at unifying with the MCU or not? Let me know in the comments down below. If you did like this video, be sure to give it a like. If you want to see more of my music, gaming, and general notary content, be sure to subscribe. I'm going to go. Thank you again so very much for watching. I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.